Welcome to the 7th in the series of Rare webinars. Today we'll be talking about the role of the mobile research nurses and how they have the potential to revolutionise recruitment and retention in clinical trials. I'm Nicola Miller, Creative Director at Rare Revolution magazine, and in the background working on the tech, I'm joined as always by my colleague Becky Pender. Today's session is sponsored by PCM Trials, who are striving to lead the way in mobile research, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by a really excellent panel who can help guide us through the topic. Ellen Wise, Vice President at PCM Trials, who brings nearly a decade of home visit learning to the table. Stephanie Hitchcock, also from PCM Trials, Associate Director. And Stephanie is an expert in establishing logistics and procedures for complex visit schedules and expanding the scope of what mobile visits can really entail. Melissa Irving, Chief Investigator with the NHS, who works in Clinical Genetics Department at Guy's and St Thomas's. Melissa is a Chief Investigator for a number of clinical trials in skeletal dysplasia. Hello and welcome everyone. I'm so happy to have you all here with us today. So please do turn your cameras on when you're ready. We've got a lot to get through in the next hour, so we're going to dive straight in. But before we do, just to say to our audience listening that if you've got any questions, please do type them in as we go along, and we'll endeavour to get to as many of these as we can at the end. So hi everyone, welcome and thanks for joining us. I always like to start at the beginning, so let's try and establish the what. Ellen, can you talk to us, what is a mobile research network and why is it so important?
Well, good afternoon. Good morning here from the States. Thanks very much for inviting us to participate in this very fine series, number 7, impressive. The question is, why is a mobile research nurse so important to this work that we are all endeavoring in? Well, remote visits have been around. It's 20 years this year. That is a big surprise to most folks. The very first home visit ever occurred in hemophilia, certainly a rare disease, and that was in 2003. So we're turning 20. And in those 20 years, we have seen that if we are able to go to the home or other setting where the patient is, that we are able to collect more complete data sets and probably more efficiently and faster than if we rely on that older, more established model of having patients and their families travel from home, disrupt their routines, and move to the site. So in a nutshell, that's really what we are about here, and building that complete data set is often much more efficient if we go where the data is, and that's where people are living, and that's at home.
Absolutely wonderful. And can you just flesh out, Ellen, a little bit more about the experience of PCM Trials? Obviously, you've mentioned this is something that you've been doing for kind of 15 to 20 years. Can you give us a bit more of an overview of your experience in this field?
Sure. PCM is almost as old as the industry itself. Home visits are 20 years old. We are 15 this year. So across those 15 years, of course, in the early going, this was study by study. Every IRB or EC had many, many questions, and there was a lot of resistance. But over those 15 years, in our work journey, we've completed almost 400 protocols with more than 100 sponsors around the world. And these trials have been very small in some rare and ultra rare studies, or very, very large. Everything changed in the pandemic as far as the acceptance and willingness to embrace this model. And during the pandemic, we saw the average size of our trials grow and grow and grow. So about half of the work we have done, or more than 200 protocols, does fall in the rare and orphan space, where certainly we find patients are spread every which way, irregardless of where the very fine sites may be located in the world. In fact, we have yet in our 15 years and many tens of thousands of visits found that there was a patient that lived real close to St. Thomas or across from Duke University, for instance, here in the States. We find patients in the very small towns, in the rural areas, in the empty places of very large countries. So we go where we have to.
Brilliant, thank you. And you've mentioned a little bit about the geography being a challenge, but Melita, could you expand a little bit more? I mean, obviously you see this from the side of being within the NHS and within healthcare. What are the challenges primarily for individuals and families taking part in clinical trials generally? So outside of kind of this mobile nursing, but what are the challenges that they might face aside from geography?
Well, I think it's time, really. The burden of having a rare disease upon a child is huge, and upon their family as well. I have a patient who told me the other day that last year she had 52 hospital appointments. So that's one appointment every week. And that's not a child that was on a clinical trial. So if you then include clinical trials into the mix, then that is an awful lot of time out of school, away from the community setting, away from doing things that all her peers are doing. So it really does add to the time burden. And then, of course, parents who are the breadwinners and who have to earn can't go to work. So it is a huge impact upon the whole family, just having a rare disease, and so those appointment times are really play a significant role. I think that's probably the leading thing for me.
Yeah, and that financial burden, I think, can't be underestimated, can it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's often overlooked, but of course, like you say, if parents are having to take time off work, or adults are having to take time off work, that's a big impact on life when they're already having to take that time off for routine appointments. So absolutely big consideration. And so, Melita, looking at it from the kind of the perspective of an investigator, how do you think these decentralized trials and mobile nursing can change that clinical trial landscape?
If we get it right, I think it will significantly change the landscape. And we're well on the road, aren't we? So which is great. So it will mean that people don't have to come up. They don't have to travel to a central place, to a big city. So I'm based in London, and lots of people don't like coming to London. Maybe once or twice, but not on a regular basis. So it's negating the need to do that. And it also means that trial activities can take place closer to home, if not in the home itself. So it causes minimal disruption to children and to their families who are taking part in trials. So I think we have to remember that it's important to collect accurate data, because we want the trials to succeed and not to fail, because we want the primary endpoints to be reached, and we want success and the benefits that will bring. So that's what I mean when I say getting it right, to make sure that we accurately collect data, we generate good clinical trial data, but we do it in a way that is much more acceptable to participants and their families.